Hello, hello. Welcome to Built for the Stage podcast. This is Joe Roscoe, founder and host of Built for the Stage, Broadway's #1 fitness platform with clients in over 20 Broadway shows, the West End, Australia, Tokyo Disney, collegiate theaters across the globe. We are your one-stop shop for all things theater and fitness. Head on over to builtforthestage.com. Special thanks to Broadway Podcast Network. You can check them out at bpn.fm. All right, special guests plural, as always, here on Built for the Stage podcast. It's actually our fam from Broadway Podcast Network. They have a podcast of their own called Behind the Awards. And wouldn't it be so fitting with the Tonys approaching very quickly for us to have on our guests, the host of Behind the Awards. Please welcome Eila, Mell, and Bruce Gotlieb. And the crowd goes wild.
Hello
What an
there.
intro.
Hi.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy Monday. Happy to jump in and just kind of chat, obviously, about the Tonys, but I do want to get to know you two as individuals being the hosts of Behind the Awards. But first, I do kind of want to just for our viewers and listeners, jump into any predictions, gossip, gab of the Tonys. First things first, I want to jump right into the divas of Best Female Actress in a Musical. What are we feeling? What's going on? Will there be boxing gloves on? What's going to happen with this iconic lineup this year?
I mean, people have been talking about this category since last season. It's such a crazy season, but I am going to predict that it's going to be Audra McDonald winning number 7. I think she is fantastic in Gypsy, but Nicole Scherzinger is going to give her a fight.
Yeah,
Agreed.
we've been saying that, only having the number of nominees that you have in each category, in almost every category, you probably could fill it with 10 or 12 this season because everything is just, Broadway's leveled up for sure. I also think it's going to be Audra. I think she's just going to squeak it out because what she's doing is just so special, not to take away from any other women, but it's in a class of its own.
All right, so there's your predictions from the hosts of Behind the Awards right there. Audra McDonald taking home her 7th Tony. Okay, I got to see both shows. I also got to see Sunset not only on Broadway but in the West End, and I'm not going to cast a vote, but it's going to be tough. I can't speak on any of the other. I haven't seen Smash yet. So I have to see, let's go to what's your favorite show on Broadway right now in this smash of a lineup of all these shows.
Bruce, you want to go first?
I have a lot of favorites. It just keeps, I feel like I keep saying my favorite. I will say my favorite that unfortunately didn't get as much love as I hoped for was actually Smash. It was funny. It was, your big, bold, musical comedy. Everyone's dancing their ass off, and it's just so much fun. So that's my favorite that didn't get as much love as I had hoped for.
And my favorite is Operation Mincemeat. I love this show so much. We were so lucky to have the entire cast on our show for a great conversation about it. And it's just, I've seen it twice, and I could go back 10 more times.
Yeah, it's a very unique show, and how they just are switching on and off from character to character is brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So okay. So first off, everyone listening, hop on over after you listen to this and check out that episode with the cast of Operation Mincemeat. What was that like getting to speak to the cast? Did they share any highlights of the rehearsal process? I'm sure that was a beast to rehearse and just get I see that actually a lot of it is the musical counts, not just the songs, but the actual blocking and all that specificity that takes place on the stage.
Yeah, they told us a lot about, because 3 out of the 5 cast members also were the writers and composers of the show. So they said there was a lot of stopping and starting to have sort of writing sessions in the middle of rehearsal. So the 3 of them would get an idea and work on it. And then the 2 other cast members, Jack Malone and Claire Marie Hall, they would kind of sit together and bond and wait while they put this together. And They tell us so much about it. So 2 highlights. One was that they never knew who they were writing for. They wrote all the parts and then they would figure it out later who was going to play who. So people played different roles at different steps in the rehearsal process. So I thought that was cool. And then
Yeah, that's cool.
Do you want to talk about the real life Hester, who Jack Malone played?
So they, did their research. Obviously, this is a true story or based on a true story. And they couldn't find any information about this character, about Hester. But what they uncovered was that actually the reason why they couldn't spell it was because the real Montague spelt her name wrong. So when the fans of the show actually are the ones that dove in and kind of unearthed the real Hester. And now there's a plaque that resides, thanking her for her service and what she did to the mission.
That's very cool. Yeah, I didn't have any. Okay, please go ahead.
I was just going to say her own family had no idea that she was involved in this mission. So, I mean, it sort of changed who she was to her own family all these years later.
Yeah, I don't know how accurate it is to the story, but the only thing I knew about it was there was the movie. So I had seen a movie about Operation Mincemeat, and that's what I took going into the musical when I saw it in London. But yeah, super crazy story and a fitting crazy setup that they did to execute that musical. It's so different though, right, than some of the other nominees. So like lining those to get, and back to your point, Bruce, about Smash not getting a nomination for Best Musical. There was that kind of Death Becomes Her, Smash, and Boop all having those like huge musical theater comedy type. Do you think the committee going into it says like, oh, I already cast, like, are they doing a sub vote of like that category to leave? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm trying to get at?
I don't know if it's a sub vote per se, but I do think there is a psychological component where, you're not going to have so much of the same thing. So it's like which one kind of shakes to the top. And, I think Death Becomes Her came out of the gate just really hot. It's a brilliant show. It's really funny. It's splashy. It's campy. So I just think, it's like, which one's which, and then you have the subjectivity of it all, right? Like the three of us could go see the same show and come out with 3 different opinions. So that I think just shakes out that way.
Okay, cool. Any surprises or anything that's different about this season do you feel compared to the past? Like when we all go to tune in on June 8th, or when we're all on the edge of our seats waiting to reveal everything that's to unfold, anything that you're kind of looking forward to that you think is a bit of a twist this year?
The one thing I'm looking forward to is that there's so many not necessarily surprises, but because of the level of competition this season, it is almost anybody's race in every category, and that makes it exciting because you're not sitting down going, well, this show's going to take everything. As a lover of theater, I'm excited because I feel like this season pushed innovation as far as technology, as far as how we tell stories, both on plays and musicals, and using, different projections and sound and video is just, it's really pushing us to the next level for the next generation. And I think that Broadway is going to be alive and well in the hands of these creatives. So it's exciting.
Yeah. Eila?
Well, I just always look forward to seeing what musical numbers they do from the shows and how successful they are. Sometimes they don't represent the show as well as they can, because I think they try to do too much. They try to feature too many things. Bruce and I were just talking recently, sort of the gold standard of that is Shucked, where it was our, I won't speak for Bruce, but it was my favorite show of that season. And it was so funny. And then when I watched the clip that they showed on the awards, I wouldn't have even gone to see it based on that, because putting it together as sort of a medley took away from the humor of, what made the show so special. So, it's that conversation too.
Yeah. And let's cross our fingers for the sound designer, as the sound, for whatever reason, on the Tonys is always a crapshoot. So hopefully,
And it's
hopefully it
funny,
goes
right?
well.
Because that's what they do every day of their life in theaters. It's not like they're in a new space, but it's funny how that works.
Well, they don't get a lot of
Yes.
rehearsal, so
That's true.
Yeah, something about that with the telecast and all of that. But okay, let's segue over and get away from the shows for a second and get to both of your backstories. How do you two become co-hosts? Are you friends from long, long ago? How did you meet up? And then why this topic? You're not just covering the Tonys, but Olivier's and things off the stage as well. Why this podcast? Why this moment? Why each other?
well, I wrote a book about a year ago called the Tony Awards. I worked with the American Theater Wing, and it's their official book. And so then I was talking with Alan Seals from Broadway Podcast Network, who you obviously know, and he suggested I do a podcast about the book. And I didn't want to do exactly the book because, that had been done already, but I thought awards were really interesting. And so I knew that I wanted to do it with Bruce. He and I had been looking for something to do together. And that's where the podcast came together. And Bruce and I, have been friends, not forever, but what would you say, Bruce? Maybe 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, about 5 years.
Yeah. So, but he and I, these are the conversations we would have in our real life. So just putting a microphone on them seemed like a natural.
Yeah. Bruce?
Yeah, and we both, pop culture theater, not only theater, but awards enthusiasts, make it easy to talk about these things. And, I'm watching award shows regardless of whether the podcast was there or not. So it makes it a natural, just a natural fit. And, we get to bring some of the people who people admire, look up to, see win the awards, a little bit of their story and their history, a little bit of their career to the forefront, and try to showcase, as much as we can, how much we love, theater, TV, movies, all of that.
So with the topic being the awards, it's going to obviously be spotlighting the shows or movies or whatever you're covering at the moment. That's going to be the topic of conversation. So it can't be as candid or off the top. You have to do some research going into these episodes, right? So what is your process research wise or prepping to interview these guests when talking about these shows or movies that are highlighted in the awards?
Well, it's really primarily seeing the work, so we can have an informed conversation. So we see as many of our guest shows as we can, and then we've had some guests who've had books come out, like Uzo Aduba, Ione Sky. So we'll read the books. It's really just stuff like that. Bruce, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, and we do try to keep it as casual a conversation as possible, so that way it doesn't feel like a scripted, interview. But we at least have a little bit of a roadmap, certain things we want to hit, and then we just want to talk to them about what led them to that project, or what, how their career has been, depending on where they are. If they're just kind of getting started, we want to know, what led them to this career, this this path.
A lot of times people's representatives will, in an effort to prepare their client, ask us for questions ahead of time. And I always say, I can't give you that because we don't know what they're going to be. We just, we have a starting off point, which is the projects, but you never know. Someone can give you this little piece of information that's going to be gold, but you could never plan it out. So we never want to write questions ahead of time.
Right. Yeah, it's always great as a host to, when you reflect on how the interview went, there is that one moment where you say, "Oh, I'm so glad they brought this one particular thing up because it took us down a road that was so interesting." With the Tonys and with the shows you've seen, do you see the shows together, or how do you line that up where you're having to see all these shows before the award ceremony?
I mean, mostly it just depends on scheduling. We've gone to quite a fair amount together. There are times where schedules don't align, and we try to see it as close to one another as possible, but that doesn't always happen either. So It's just a matter of, who can get where and when, and we've done a pretty good job, I think, between both of us, is seeing almost everything this season.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you have a particular place in the house that you like to sit, or is it just kind of always at random? I can pick. For me, I'm seeing you two like you're always, I don't know, house right at row J or something like that.
It's really wherever we can get the best experience in the theater. But a lot of times we don't have control over where we sit because, if we're seeing the show because we have a guest, they will invite us many times. So, and thankfully so. So it's wherever they put us, which is usually in a great place. So, but, sometimes we'll see a show more than once and see it from different perspectives, which is also interesting.
And sometimes a show's selling so well that it's like, there's a seat here. That's your option. If this is is the day or the time that you're trying to get here, you got to take what they can give you.
Yeah. Have you seen any shows? There's a lot of shows that also have like people new on the scene, like Real Women Have Curves. A lot of the cast from them are Broadway debuts. Boop. Any like newcomers that really stuck out to you this year that you were so glad that they got their chance, their shining moment?
I mean, Jasmine Amy Rogers from Boop, who we have an episode coming up with her. She is. I left the theater going, wow, like this girl's a triple threat. She is a star. She is just. I can't wait to see. I hope Boop runs, for a long time for her sake. But I also, at the same time, can't wait to see what she's going to do next. She's that exciting of a performer.
Wow, what was it about it? Tell me more, Bruce. What was it when you were sitting there watching her made you feel that way?
She's just, she's so charismatic on stage. She's got an amazing voice. She's a great dancer. She's a really good actress. She just keeps checking every box that you'd hope. And then also, she has that charisma, that X factor.
Well, that's what I was going to add. There's just something lovable about her. When she's on stage, it's like a different show.
Got it. When you already interviewed her and the episode's going to come out? Yeah. So if you want to, give any sneak peeks. Wait, when is it going to air? Do you know?
It is going to air next week.
Okay, so yeah, maybe I won't be spoiling anything. There's a lot of like interviews with her where it wasn't just this like she walked in, I'm gonna be a star, and just here she is. There was this storyline of her like really having to believe in her abilities to like rise to the occasion. Did you get to chat with her personally about that at all? Like that process of being like, no, I am worthy of this. I am capable. I can do this. Did you get to chat with her about that experience?
We did. She auditioned for this show initially and didn't get it. So she came in a second time to audition for it. So she kind of talked about that. And she was also involved as a different character in an earlier version of the show. It's really interesting, her progression. Don't you think, Bruce?
Yeah, and the show's been around in different incarnations for, I think it's 17, 18 years. So, she just seized an opportunity, I guess, had a, definitely shares her moment to look back and figure out what tweaks she needed to do. So when she went back in, she was able to show them what they needed to see in order to put her in the title role.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, I'm looking forward to that interview that you did as well then. Let's go back to, I want to hear more about the book that you wrote, Eila. I want to hear more about your background, Bruce, as well, in theater. Like, why theater? Why are you in this industry? Is it the only thing you do? Is there other parts to you all that, there's life outside the theater? Tell me a little, I feel like I know some of these answers. I'd love for our audience to know a bit more about what entails your full life spectrum.
Well, I'll let Bruce jump in.
For me, a theater lover always, from doing it, in high school, college, and all of that locally, community theater and things of that nature. and then, just keeping it as a hobby, as a passion, always going to see shows with friends and family, outside of that. And then it's just something I love. So when Eila came to me with this idea, it seemed like I talk about theater with my friends all the time, so it seemed like a natural fit. When I'm not at the theater, I'm a realtor, so working with clients, going around house to house, and trying to help them find their dream home or sell their house. And so there are different sides, and the two blur sometimes, because you could be talking to somebody and you're getting to know one another, especially as with a new client, and talk about things that they enjoy. And so there's a little bit of a blend.
Are you in the Manhattan market, or where are you primarily?
I can do all of New York. Primarily my business is on Long Island. I do some of the boroughs, Queens and the Bronx. I've done I have a couple of deals going on there right now. So
Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market right now? What do we?
100% a seller's market. If you have something to sell
Right.
and you have somewhere to go, you can make some good money.
Okay, all right. Well, if anyone out there is owning something, which is not very likely nowadays for people,
Right.
in the area, but hey, Bruce is your guy. Eila, yeah. What about you? Like, leading up to that book, what was life like before that? Or tell me how you get to, I don't know, write a book about the Tonys. That's amazing.
Thank you. So, for me, it's always been theater ever since I was a kid. It's the only thing I really wanted to do. I was an actor for 10 years as a kid. So I grew up doing that and working. And so there was a point where I realized that I didn't want to act anymore. It was no longer fun for me. And I auditioned for a soap opera called As the World Turns. And, I got down to the final round, and then
Classic.
Absolutely. But so the actor who I lost the role to went on to have a pretty good career. It was Parker Posey, and it was her first job out of college. And so, when you lose a role to someone, you kind of, you remember it. And, I watched her career and I thought that it was interesting. And it gave me the idea for my first book, which was called Casting Might Have Beens. And it was all about stories, people auditioning for roles that went to other people and the stories behind them. And so, so she is kind of the jumping off point for my writing career. And then I worked with the show Project Runway to write their book, their official book. And that's where I met Emilio Sosa, who is a wonderful costume designer, but he's also the chair of the American Theater Wing. And so when the Wing decided they wanted to do a book, he brought me in, and it was just an absolute dream job for me.
Amazing. Did you study journalism or writing in college, or where did you get your writing chops from?
Sadly, no. It was a strong desire. And I just, when you're an actor, you just figure it out later. You say yes, and then you figure it out. So that's always been my mindset. I'm pretty scrappy. So I just figured out how I wanted to do it. And thankfully, it's been working out so far.
Yeah. The only reason I had the, courage to ask that was that you just listed off multiple books. So it's not like you, weren't deserving and got this one-off thing. No, people obviously are looking at your work and saying, this is really good. So let's ask Eila. Yeah. So congrats.
But I should point out that it took 8 years to get my first book published. So it was, it was a lot of figuring out, but thank you for saying that.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because on the podcast, we're always talking about performers' journey and how it's ups and downs, and no one just walks into New York and they're like, here's your Broadway show.
Yeah.
Or we'll parallel it to a journey in fitness. So like, everyone listening, there is no overnight success. Most likely it's just that you might just be hearing about them overnight, but the journey to get there was, much longer than what we all realize. So congrats to you both. Really excited for the Tonys, excited for your episodes to come out. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing a bit of your story. And I'm not the person to give insight on the Tonys. So everyone listening, please hop on over to Behind the Awards. and see what really is going on this award season. Bruce, Eila, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Eila and Bruce from Behind the Awards. Make sure you check them out. They're on Broadway Podcast Network. You can go to bpn.fm, or you can head over to their Instagram. It's behind_the_awards, and their personal Instagram handles are on there as well in their bio for you to click on. We'll drop those in the description of this episode when it releases. Thanks so much for tuning in. Again, please share with your friends about Built for the Stage podcast. Actors or athletes, train like one. Later.